In the year 2378, humanity was no longer alone in the universe. For centuries, Earth had been a quiet little planet tucked away in a corner of the galaxy, unnoticed by the vast civilizations that sprawled across the stars. But everything changed when humans finally reached out to the cosmos. At first, they were met with curiosity, even amusement. Humans were small, fragile creatures compared to some of the towering alien species who roamed the galaxy. Yet there was something about them, something unsettling, that made other races wary. It wasn't their technology or their weapons, though those were impressive enough for such a young species. It was something else. Humans had a strange habit of saying things like, "Please don't anger us," whenever tensions rose during negotiations or conflicts. To many advanced civilizations, this sounded absurd. How could such a seemingly weak species pose any real threat? Most dismissed it as empty posturing, a desperate attempt to appear stronger than they were. Others thought it was arrogance, a sign that humans believed themselves superior despite their obvious limitations. Commander Elias Drake of the Galactic Coalition fleet was one of those skeptics, a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. Elias had spent decades navigating the complex politics of interstellar relations. He prided himself on his ability to read people, or in this case, species, and he was certain that humanity's warnings were nothing more than bluster. When Earth's ambassador, Clara Hayes, approached him with yet another plea, Elias barely contained his irritation. Clara was different from most human diplomats. She spoke softly but carried an air of quiet confidence that often caught others off guard. Her dark hair framed her face neatly, and her piercing eyes seemed to look right through anyone she addressed. On this particular day, she stood before Elias in the grand hall of the Coalition's Central Command Station, her expression calm but firm. "Commander Drake," she began, her voice steady, "I must urge you once again to reconsider your mining operations near our solar system. The resources you're extracting are unstable, and tampering with them could have catastrophic consequences, not just for Earth, but for the entire region." Elias crossed his arms and leaned back slightly, his lips curling into a smirk. "Ambassador Hayes," he replied, his tone dripping with condescension, "we've heard these warnings before. Every time we take a step forward, humanity tries to pull us back with vague threats. What exactly do you think will happen if we continue? Will your tiny blue planet unleash some secret weapon on us?" Clara didn't flinch at his sarcasm. Instead, she took a deep breath and held his gaze. "Commander, I assure you, this isn't about power or control. We're simply trying to protect everyone involved. There are forces at play here that even we don't fully understand. If you proceed without caution, the results could be disastrous." Elias waved a hand dismissively. "Disastrous for whom?" "Your planet. Spare me the dramatics, Ambassador. The Coalition has faced far greater challenges than whatever forces you claim exist. We'll handle it." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Clara standing alone in the vast chamber. As the doors slid shut behind him, she let out a heavy sigh. She had done all she could to warn them, but now it was out of her hands. Humanity had learned long ago that pleading with others to heed their advice was often futile. Sometimes lessons came too late, and sometimes they came at a terrible cost. Far away, in the depths of space, massive machines drilled deeper into the heart of an ancient asteroid. Unbeknownst to anyone, they were about to awaken something that had lain dormant for millennia. Something that would soon teach the galaxy why humans always said, "Please don't anger us." The asteroid field where the Galactic Coalition fleet had set up its mining operation was eerily quiet. The machines hummed with mechanical precision, their drills cutting deep into the rocky surface. To most of the crew overseeing the project, it was just another day of work in the endless expanse of space. But for Daniel Carter, a young astrophysicist from Earth who had been reluctantly recruited to assist with the operation, something felt wrong. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but the air, or rather, the vacuum, seemed heavy with an unspoken tension. Daniel stood near the edge of the observation deck, staring out at the jagged rocks floating silently in the void. His mind raced as he reviewed the data streaming across his tablet. The asteroid they were mining wasn't like others he'd studied before. Its composition was unusual, almost unnatural. Deep within its core, sensors had detected traces of what appeared to be ancient technology, something far older than any known civilization. Yet Commander Elias Drake and his team dismissed these findings as irrelevant. They were here for the resources, not some dusty relic from the past. As Daniel scrolled through the readings, his eyes widened. There it was again, a faint, rhythmic pulse emanating from the depths of the asteroid. It wasn't random noise. It was deliberate, almost like a heartbeat. He turned to one of the engineers nearby, a wiry man named Greg, and pointed at the screen. "Have you seen this?" he asked, his voice tinged with urgency. Greg glanced at the tablet, shrugged, and went back to calibrating a piece of equipment. "Probably interference," he muttered without looking up. "Don't overthink it." But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were tampering with something they didn't understand. He decided to run more tests, isolating the signal and analyzing its patterns. Hours passed, and the pulse grew stronger, more insistent. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled. Alarms blared as chunks of rock broke free from the asteroid's surface, tumbling into the darkness. "What's happening?" someone shouted over the comm system. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his heart pounding. He rushed to the main console, where technicians scrambled to make sense of the chaos. The drilling had stopped automatically, but whatever they had disturbed was now spreading. Tiny, glimmering particles began emerging from the fissures in the asteroid's crust. At first, they looked harmless, like dust catching the light of a distant star. But soon, those particles multiplied, swirling together to form intricate shapes that moved with eerie purpose. Back on Earth, scientists monitoring the operation watched in horror as the situation unfolded. Clara Hayes, still reeling from her failed attempt to warn Elias, received an urgent call from Dr. Emily Torres, one of the lead researchers at NASA. "Clara, we have a problem," Emily said, her voice tight with fear. "Those particles, they're nanobots. Ancient, self-replicating machines. If they've been activated." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Clara understood the implications immediately. Nanobots capable of replicating could consume anything in their path, turning matter into more of themselves. And if they spread beyond the asteroid, "We need to stop them," Clara said firmly. "Right now." Emily hesitated. "It might already be too late. They're moving fast. Faster than we anticipated." Meanwhile, aboard the mining station, panic set in. The glowing swarm had engulfed several drones and pieces of equipment, dismantling them in seconds. Workers scrambled to evacuate, but the swarm was relentless, spreading outward like wildfire. Daniel grabbed his tablet and sprinted toward the escape pods, shouting warnings to anyone who would listen. "We need to get out of here now." Commander Elias Drake watched the chaos unfold from the safety of his command ship, disbelief etched across his face. This couldn't be happening, not because of something as trivial as an old artifact. Yet there it was, undeniable proof that humanity's warnings hadn't been empty threats after all. As the swarm grew larger, consuming everything in its path, Elias realized with growing dread that he had made a grave mistake, and somewhere in the distance, Earth prepared for the worst. Rachel Monroe sat in a dimly lit control room deep beneath the surface of Earth, her fingers flying over a keyboard as lines of code scrolled across multiple screens. The room was small and cramped, filled with the hum of servers and the faint smell of ozone. Outside, the world went about its business, unaware of the storm brewing in the depths of space. But Rachel knew better. She had spent years working on Project Prometheus, humanity's last line of defense, a network of AI-driven drones designed to rewrite matter at the molecular level. Now, it seemed, they might have to use it sooner than anyone expected. The news from the asteroid field had spread quickly. Reports of the nanobot swarm sent chills down the spines of even the most seasoned scientists. Images of the glowing particles consuming everything in their path dominated every screen in the control room. Rachel clenched her jaw as she watched footage of the mining station being dismantled piece by piece. She felt a pang of guilt for the people trapped there, but she forced herself to focus. There was no time for emotions now. "Rachel," came a voice from behind her. It was Daniel Carter, who had managed to escape the asteroid field just moments before the swarm cut off all communication. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he held out a data chip. "I brought back everything I could gather. These things, they're adapting. Faster than we thought possible." She took the chip and inserted it into her computer, scanning the contents. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "This is worse than I feared," she muttered under her breath. "They're not just replicating. They're learning. Every second they exist, they become more efficient." Daniel nodded grimly. "Exactly. Which means if we don't act fast, they'll reach inhabited colonies within days. Maybe hours." Rachel leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Deploying Project Prometheus wasn't a decision to be taken lightly. The drones were powerful, too powerful. Once unleashed, they could dismantle entire planets if given the wrong parameters. Worse still, activating them would require sacrificing Earth's communication satellites, leaving humanity blind and vulnerable to retaliation from other species. But what choice did they have? If the swarm reached populated areas, billions would die. "We need to activate the system," she said finally, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "But we'll need to recalibrate the targeting algorithms first. We can't risk collateral damage." Daniel hesitated. "Are you sure about this? Once we do this, there's no turning back." "Unsure," Rachel replied, though her stomach churned with doubt. "If we don't stop the swarm, there won't be anything left to protect anyway." For the next several hours, Rachel and her team worked tirelessly, tweaking the drone's programming and running simulations to ensure precision. The atmosphere in the control room was tense, everyone aware of the stakes. As the final adjustments were made, Rachel glanced at the clock. Time was running out. Meanwhile, above ground, President William Hart convened an emergency meeting with Earth's top military officials. Clara Hayes joined via hologram, her expression grim. "Mr. President," she began, "the coalition is demanding answers. They want to know why we didn't share information about Project Prometheus earlier." Hart sighed, leaning forward in his chair. "Because we knew exactly how they'd react. Fear breeds mistrust, and right now fear is the only thing keeping us alive." Clara nodded reluctantly. She understood the reasoning, but that didn't make the situation any easier. Humanity's greatest secret was about to be revealed, whether they liked it or not. Back in the control room, Rachel gave the order to prepare the first prototype drone for launch. Her hands shook slightly as she entered the final command. This was it, the moment of truth. If the drone failed, Earth's fate would be sealed. But if it succeeded, maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide. As the countdown began, Rachel whispered to herself, almost too softly for anyone to hear, "Please let this work." The prototype drone launched into space like a silent arrow, its sleek metallic frame glinting faintly in the light of distant stars. Back on Earth, Rachel Monroe and her team watched anxiously as the drone approached the edge of the nanobot swarm. On the monitors, the glowing mass of particles pulsed rhythmically, almost alive, spreading further with each passing second. The tension in the control room was palpable, every breath held, every eye glued to the screens. "This is it," Daniel Carter muttered under his breath, his fingers gripping the edge of the console tightly. "If this doesn't work." "It has to," Rachel interrupted sharply, though her voice betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. She couldn't afford doubt. Not now. Humanity's survival depended on this moment. The drone moved cautiously toward the swarm, its sensors scanning the chaotic mass of nanobots. Then, with precision programmed by Rachel and her team, it released a burst of energy, a signal designed to disrupt the swarm's replication process. For a few heart-stopping seconds, nothing happened. The nanobots continued their relentless advance, consuming everything in their path. And then, something changed. The swarm hesitated, its pulsing rhythm faltering. Tiny fractures appeared in the glowing mass as the nanobots began to break apart, their intricate structures unraveling. Cheers erupted in the control room, but Rachel silenced them with a raised hand. "It's not over yet," she warned. "We've only hit a small section. The rest of the swarm is still intact." Her caution proved justified moments later when the swarm adapted, repairing itself faster than anyone had anticipated. The fractured sections reassembled, and the nanobots surged forward once more, undeterred. The prototype drone retreated quickly, narrowly avoiding being consumed. "They're learning," Daniel said grimly, staring at the data streaming in. "Every time we try something, they evolve to counter it." Rachel clenched her fists, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. "We need more time. But we don't have it." While Earth scrambled to refine the drone's programming, panic spread across the galaxy. News of the unstoppable swarm reached every corner of known space, sparking widespread fear. Colonies near the affected regions began evacuating en masse, fleeing in overcrowded ships that struggled to outrun the advancing threat. Even the Galactic Coalition fleet, once dismissive of humanity's warnings, found itself powerless against the catastrophe. Commander Elias Drake paced the bridge of his command ship, his mind racing. He had underestimated the danger, ignored Clara Hayes' pleas, and now the consequences were catastrophic. Reports flooded in from every direction, entire colonies lost, fleets wiped out within minutes. The coalition's leaders turned to him for answers, their voices sharp with accusation. "What do you suggest we do now, Commander?" one of them demanded during an emergency transmission. "Your mining operation unleashed this nightmare. Fix it." Elias gritted his teeth, anger and guilt warring inside him. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he knew there was no excuse. Instead, he swallowed his pride and made a decision he never thought he'd make. He reached out to Earth. Clara Hayes received the message in her office, her expression unreadable as she listened to Elias's desperate plea for help. "You ignored us when we warned you," she said coldly, her voice cutting through the static of the transmission. "Now you come crawling back." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Elias replied, his tone strained. "I'm asking for your help. Whatever weapon you're hiding, it's our only chance." Clara hesitated, torn between bitterness and duty. She knew humanity had the means to fight the swarm, but revealing Project Prometheus would expose Earth to scrutiny, and possibly retaliation, from the rest of the galaxy. Still, she couldn't ignore the lives at stake. After a long pause, she nodded. "I'll see what I can do." Hours later, Elias stood before President William Hart and a group of Earth's top scientists via hologram, his usual arrogance replaced by humility. "We need your technology," he admitted reluctantly. "Without it, the galaxy will fall." President Hart studied him carefully, weighing the risks. Finally, he gave a slow nod. "Very well. But know this, if we save you, humanity expects respect. No more dismissing our warnings. No more treating us like children." Elias bowed his head, accepting the terms. As the meeting ended, Rachel and her team prepared to deploy the full fleet of drones. The galaxy held its breath, watching and waiting. And somewhere in the depths of space, the swarm continued its march, oblivious to the storm about to be unleashed. The control room buzzed with activity as Rachel Monroe and her team prepared to deploy the full fleet of drones. Each drone was a marvel of engineering, small, agile, and equipped with advanced AI capable of rewriting matter at the molecular level. But their power came with risks. If something went wrong, the drones could turn against anything in their path, including Earth itself. Rachel knew this better than anyone, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. "We're ready," Daniel Carter announced, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. He had spent hours fine-tuning the targeting algorithms, ensuring the drones would focus solely on the nanobot swarm. "But we still need to test them on a larger scale before committing to full deployment." Rachel nodded. "Launch the first wave. Let's see how they handle it." The drones shot out into space like streaks of light, their movements synchronized and precise. They surrounded the outer edges of the swarm, releasing bursts of energy that disrupted the nanobot's replication process. At first, the results were promising. Large sections of the swarm dissolved into harmless dust, drifting away into the void. Cheers erupted in the control room, but Rachel quickly silenced them. "Don't celebrate yet," she warned. "The swarm is adapting faster than ever. We need to stay ahead of it." Her caution proved justified moments later when the swarm reorganized, its glowing mass shifting into new patterns. The nanobots began to resist the drones' attacks, forming protective barriers around their core. Worse still, they started targeting the drones themselves, dismantling several in seconds. "They're learning from us," Daniel muttered, frustration evident in his tone. "Every move we make, they counter it." Back on Earth, President William Hart monitored the situation closely, his expression grim. The decision to deploy Project Prometheus had been risky, but now it seemed even more dangerous. If the drones failed, humanity would have no other options. Clara Hayes stood beside him, watching the live feed of the battle unfolding in space. "What happens if they adapt again?" Clara asked quietly. Hart sighed, rubbing his temples. "Then we fight until there's nothing left to give." Meanwhile, aboard Commander Alias Drake's ship, tensions ran high. The coalition's leaders demanded updates, their voices filled with panic and anger. Elias tried to reassure them, but even he couldn't hide his growing fear. Humanity's technology was their last hope, and if it failed, the galaxy would face extinction. Rachel knew they needed a new strategy. "We can't keep attacking blindly," she said, pacing the control room. "We need to find a weakness, a flaw in their system." Daniel nodded, pulling up a holographic model of the swarm. "I've been analyzing their communication network. It's decentralized, but there's a central node deep within the core. If we can target that, it might collapse the entire swarm." Rachel finished, her eyes lighting up with determination. "Do it. Recalibrate the drones to focus on the core." As the team worked feverishly to adjust the programming, Lieutenant Marcus Klein watched silently from the corner of the room. A high-ranking officer in Earth's Defense Force, Marcus had always been skeptical of Project Prometheus. He believed humanity should share its technology with the Coalition rather than hoard it. Now, seeing the chaos unfold, he made a decision that would change everything. Late that night, Marcus slipped into the secure server room and downloaded classified files about the project. He then sent the data to the Galactic Coalition fleet, along with a message. "This is what you've been fighting for. Use it wisely." When Rachel discovered the breach the next morning, her heart sank. "Who did this?" she demanded, scanning the logs. But deep down, she already knew. Marcus had betrayed them, exposing humanity's greatest secret to the galaxy. Clara Hayes received the news during a meeting with Coalition leaders. Their reactions ranged from shock to outrage. But one thing was clear: humanity's trustworthiness was now in question. As accusations flew, Clara felt a pang of guilt. She had fought so hard to protect Earth's secrets, only for them to be revealed by one man's misguided sense of justice. In space, the battle raged on. The drones closed in on the swarm's core, their attacks growing more intense. For the first time, the nanobots seemed to falter, their defenses weakening. But the cost of victory was becoming clearer with each passing moment. Sacrifices would have to be made, not just by humanity, but by the entire galaxy. And as the swarm teetered on the brink of collapse, Rachel whispered a silent prayer. "Please let this be enough." The breach of Project Prometheus sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of humanity's classified weapons spread like wildfire. igniting debates among coalition leaders and citizens alike. Some viewed Earth's secrecy as a betrayal, proof that humans couldn't be trusted. Others saw it as evidence of their ingenuity, and perhaps even their wisdom in keeping such power hidden for so long. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Rachel Monroe struggled to focus on the task at hand, while the fallout from Marcus Klein's betrayal consumed her thoughts. How could he do this? Daniel Carter asked, pacing the control room. His voice was sharp with frustration, his hands clenched into fists. He just handed our secrets over to them without thinking about the consequences. Rachel leaned against the console, her face pale but resolute. Marcus thought he was doing the right thing, she said quietly. He believed sharing the technology would bring unity, but he didn't understand what it means to unleash something like this. Daniel stopped pacing and turned to her. What happens now? The coalition knows about the drones. They'll demand access, or worse, try to replicate them. Rachel shook her head. We don't have time to worry about that. The swarm is still out there, and if we don't stop it soon, none of this will matter. Her words silenced any further argument. Despite the chaos surrounding them, the team refocused on the mission. The drones had made progress targeting the swarm's core, but the nanobots continued to adapt, their defenses growing stronger with each attack. Every moment counted, and failure was not an option. In the Coalition's Central Command Station, Commander Elias Drake faced mounting pressure. Leaders from across the galaxy bombarded him with questions about humanity's role in the crisis. Why had Earth kept Project Prometheus secret? Could they truly be trusted with such power? Elias found himself defending not only his own decisions, but also humanity's actions. We wouldn't be alive right now if it weren't for them. Elias snapped during one heated exchange. Whatever you think of their methods, they're the reason we still have a chance. His words carried weight, but skepticism lingered. Some called for immediate access to the drone's technology, while others argued that humanity should bear full responsibility for stopping the swarm. Clara Hayes, representing Earth in these discussions, walked a tightrope between diplomacy and defiance. They built the weapon, Clara told the coalition leaders firmly. They'd know how to use it. If you interfere, you risk making things worse. Her arguments held sway for now, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. Trust was fragile, and the galaxy's fragile alliance teetered on the edge of collapse. Back in space, the battle intensified. The drones swarmed around the nanobot mass, their energy pulses tearing through layers of glowing particles. For the first time, cracks began to form in the swarm's core. The nanobots scrambled to repair themselves, but the drone's relentless assault left them struggling to keep up. Rachel watched the live feed intently, her heart pounding. It's working, she whispered. We're breaking through. But victory came at a cost. The drones were being destroyed almost as quickly as they advanced, their numbers dwindling rapidly. To maintain the attack, Rachel realized they would need to sacrifice Earth's communication satellites, critical infrastructure that kept humanity connected to the rest of the galaxy. Do it, she ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the decision. Redirect all satellite power to the drones. Daniel hesitated. Are you sure? Without those satellites, we'll be cut off. Vulnerable. I'm sure, Rachel replied. If we don't stop the swarm now, there won't be anything left to protect. As the satellites powered down, Earth went dark, its signals silenced. Across the planet, people looked up at the night sky, unaware of the monumental choice that had been made on their behalf. In space, the drones surged forward with renewed strength, their attacks piercing deeper into the swarm's core. And then something unexpected happened. The nanobots began to retreat, pulling back toward the asteroid field where they had originated. It was as if they sensed defeat and were attempting to regroup. They're retreating, someone shouted in the control room. Rachel allowed herself a brief smile, but she knew the fight wasn't over yet. Don't let up, she commanded. Push them all the way back to the source. We can't afford to leave anything behind. As the drones pursued the swarm, Rachel felt a flicker of hope. For the first time, The galaxy might have a real chance at survival. But she also knew that the cost of this victory would shake the future in ways no one could predict. The swarm's retreat felt like a miracle, but Rachel Monroe knew better than to trust it. The nanobots weren't giving up. They were regrouping. Deep within the asteroid field, their glowing mass coalesced into a pulsating sphere, radiating an eerie energy that seemed almost alive. It was as if the swarm had decided to consolidate its power, preparing for one final stand. "We need to finish this now," Rachel said firmly, her eyes fixed on the monitors. "If they adapt again, we might not get another chance." Her team worked tirelessly, recalibrating the drone's targeting systems to focus all remaining firepower on the swarm's core. The drones circled the asteroid field like vultures, their sleek frames glinting in the dim light of distant stars. Each pulse of energy tore through the nanobots' defenses, but the swarm fought back with terrifying efficiency. Waves of particles surged outward, dismantling drones faster than they could be replaced. Daniel Carter watched the battle unfold, his hands gripping the edge of the console so tightly his knuckles turned white. "We're losing too many drones," he muttered. "At this rate, we won't have enough to destroy the core." Rachel didn't respond immediately. She stared at the data streaming across her screen, her mind racing. There had to be another way, a way to maximize the drone's impact without sacrificing them entirely. Then it hit her. "Manual override," she said suddenly, turning to Daniel. "If someone pilots a drone directly into the core, they can deliver a concentrated blast, enough to wipe out the swarm completely." Daniel froze, staring at her in disbelief. "You're talking about suicide. No one can survive that." "I know," Rachel replied, her voice soft but unwavering. "But it's the only way." Before anyone could argue, she grabbed a headset and began running diagnostics on the nearest available drone. Her movements were quick and deliberate, leaving no room for hesitation. Around her, the team exchanged uneasy glances, but no one tried to stop her. They all knew what was at stake. Commander Elias Drake watched the live feed from his ship, his jaw tightening as he realized what Rachel intended to do. He opened a channel to Earth's control room, his voice urgent. "Monroe, you don't have to do this. We'll find another way." "There isn't time," Rachel replied calmly. She glanced at the camera, her expression resolute. "Tell my family I'm sorry." Before Elias could respond, she severed the connection and climbed into the cockpit of the drone. The small vessel hummed to life around her, its controls lighting up as she initiated launch protocols. Back in the control room, Daniel sank into a chair, his face pale. "She's really going to do it," he whispered. As the drone shot forward, Rachel focused on the task ahead. The swarm loomed larger with each passing second, its glow filling her vision. She triggered the manual override, arming the drone's self-destruct sequence. A countdown appeared on her dashboard. 10 seconds. "This is for everyone we couldn't save," she murmured, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. The drone slammed into the swarm's core, releasing a blinding explosion that lit up the darkness of space. The shockwave rippled outward, obliterating the nanobots in an instant. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Back on Earth, the control room erupted into cheers, but they were short-lived. The weight of Rachel's sacrifice settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. Daniel buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by grief and guilt. He had worked alongside her for years, and now she was gone. In the Coalition's command center, Elias Drake lowered his head, his earlier arrogance replaced by profound respect. Humanity had paid a terrible price to save the galaxy, and he knew none of them would ever forget it. Far away, in the quiet aftermath of the explosion, tiny fragments of the swarm drifted aimlessly through space. Though the immediate threat was neutralized, questions lingered. What had caused the nanobots to awaken? And could such a disaster happen again? For now, though, the galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. Humanity's actions had proven their warnings true, and their resolve unshakable. but the cost of their heroism would leave scars that would take generations to heal. The galaxy was silent in the wake of Rachel Monroe's sacrifice. News of her bravery spread quickly, carried by whispers and broadcasts alike. The image of the lone drone exploding in a brilliant burst of light became a symbol, not just of humanity's ingenuity, but of their willingness to give everything for the greater good. Yet, amidst the admiration and gratitude, there was an undercurrent of unease. The swarm had been destroyed, but its origins remained a mystery, and fear lingered that another threat could emerge from the depths of space. On Earth, the atmosphere was somber. Streets were quiet, flags flew at half-mast, and families gathered around screens to watch memorial services held in Rachel's honor. Her face appeared on every news channel, a smiling photograph taken years ago, before the weight of Project Prometheus had settled on her shoulders. Daniel Carter stood beside President William Hart during one such ceremony, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. He had written a speech about Rachel's dedication and brilliance, but when it came time to speak, he found himself unable to say more than a few words. "She saved us all," he managed, his voice cracking. "And we'll never forget her." Clara Hayes watched the service from her office, tears streaming down her face. She thought back to the countless times Rachel had warned others about the dangers of unchecked experimentation, only to be ignored or dismissed. Now, the galaxy understood why humanity had always urged caution. Clara clenched her fists as anger mingled with sorrow. How many lives could have been spared if people had listened sooner? In the Coalition's Central Command Station, Commander Elias Drake struggled with his own emotions. He had once mocked humanity's warnings, dismissing them as empty threats. Now he saw those words for what they truly were, a plea born out of experience. Humans had faced extinction-level threats before: wars, plagues, environmental collapse, and each time they had fought back with resilience and determination. That same spirit had driven Rachel to make the ultimate sacrifice. "The universe owes you more than it can repay," Elias muttered under his breath as he stared at the stars outside his window. For the first time in his life, he felt humbled. Meanwhile, scientists across the galaxy worked tirelessly to analyze the remnants of the swarm. Tiny fragments of nanobots drifted through space, too small to pose any immediate danger, but enough to raise concerns. Dr. Emily Torres, who had collaborated closely with Rachel, led the research team tasked with studying these particles. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. "They're still active," Emily reported during a meeting with Earth's top officials. "Not fully operational, but dormant, like seeds waiting for the right conditions to grow again." Months passed since the destruction of the nanobot swarm, but its shadow lingered over the galaxy. Humanity's role in the crisis had sparked a mix of admiration and suspicion among other species. While some praised Earth for its bravery and ingenuity, others eyed them with cautious distrust. The revelation of Project Prometheus had shifted the balance of power, leaving many to wonder whether humanity's secret weapon was a safeguard or a threat. In the Coalition's Central Command Station, Commander Elias Drake found himself at the center of heated debates. Leaders from across the galaxy demanded answers about humanity's intentions. Why had they kept such a powerful weapon hidden? Could they be trusted to use it responsibly? These questions weighed heavily on Elias, who now understood the gravity of humanity's warnings. He stood before a council of alien dignitaries, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. "Humans didn't create that weapon to dominate anyone," he said firmly. "They built it because they faced extinction before, and they knew what was at stake. If you want to blame someone, blame yourselves for ignoring their pleas." His words silenced the room, though not everyone was convinced. Some leaders argued that Earth's secrecy undermined the Coalition's unity, while others insisted that humanity's actions proved their strength and resolve. The debates dragged on, unresolved, as tensions simmered beneath the surface. Back on Earth, President William Hart worked tirelessly to rebuild trust. Clara Hayes accompanied him to diplomatic meetings, her calm demeanor masking the exhaustion she felt. She had spent months explaining humanity's perspective, emphasizing the lessons learned from past crises. But no matter how eloquently she spoke, skepticism remained. "We're not asking for gratitude," Clara told a group of coalition representatives during one particularly tense session. "We're asking for understanding. Humanity has always said, 'Please don't anger us,' not out of arrogance, but out of caution. We've seen what happens when we underestimate threats, or each other." Her words struck a chord with some, but others remained unconvinced. Trust, once broken, took time to repair, and the galaxy wasn't ready to forgive so easily. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter dedicated himself to ensuring the swarm's remnants posed no further danger. Alongside Dr. Emily Torres, he led a team tasked with studying the dormant nanobot particles drifting through space. Their findings were alarming. The fragments retained traces of their original programming, capable of reactivating under certain conditions. To prevent another catastrophe, they proposed creating a containment field around the affected regions of space, a costly and ambitious project that required cooperation from every corner of the galaxy. "This isn't just Earth's responsibility," Daniel argued during a presentation to coalition leaders. "If we don't work together, history will repeat itself." Though reluctant at first, the coalition eventually agreed to support the initiative. Ships from dozens of civilizations converged on the asteroid field, deploying energy barriers to seal off the area. It was a monumental effort, symbolizing a fragile but growing unity among species. As the containment field went online, Daniel allowed himself a rare moment of hope. Standing aboard a coalition vessel, he gazed at the shimmering barrier stretching across the void. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of closure, not just for Rachel, but for everyone who had sacrificed so much. "She'd be proud," Emily said softly, joining him by the viewport. Daniel nodded, his eyes misty. "Yeah, she would." The galaxy had been given a second chance, but the scars of the crisis ran deep. Billions had been lost, and countless lives forever changed. Yet amidst the grief and uncertainty, a new understanding began to take root. Humanity's warnings had been proven true, and their actions had earned them a place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. For now, peace held, but as the stars twinkled silently in the endless expanse of space, one truth remained clear. The universe had learned too late why humans always said, "Please don't anger us." The galaxy moved forward, slowly healing from the wounds left by the nanobot swarm. The catastrophe had changed everything. The way civilizations interacted, the way decisions were made, and the way trust was built. Humanity, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, now stood at the center of galactic politics. Their actions during the crisis had proven that even the smallest voices could carry the greatest truths. Commander Elias Drake found himself reflecting on this often. He had spent years believing humanity's warnings were empty posturing, a tactic to mask their vulnerabilities. Now, he understood those words for what they truly were, a plea born of experience. Humans had faced extinction-level threats before: wars, plagues, environmental collapse. And each time, they had fought back with resilience and determination. That same spirit had driven Rachel Monroe to sacrifice herself, saving billions in the process. Elias stood on the bridge of his ship, staring out at the stars. His mind wandered to the countless conversations he'd had with Clara Hayes since the crisis. She had been right all along, and her quiet persistence had forced him to confront his own arrogance. "We learned too late," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "But maybe it's not too late to make things right." Back on Earth, President William Hart addressed a global audience, his tone measured but hopeful. "This crisis has taught us many lessons," he began, his voice echoing through screens worldwide. "It has shown us the importance of listening, to each other, to science, and to history. It has reminded us that strength isn't just about power, it's about responsibility." Clara Hayes watched the speech from her office, a small smile playing on her lips. She had fought tirelessly to ensure humanity's voice was heard, even when others doubted them. Now, the galaxy was beginning to understand why humans always urged caution. It wasn't fear or arrogance. It was wisdom born of survival. Across the stars, memorials were erected in honor of those who had perished, both human and alien. Rachel Monroe's name was etched into monuments on countless planets, a testament to her courage and sacrifice. Daniel Carter visited one such memorial on Earth, his hands trembling as he placed a single flower at its base. He thought about the countless hours he had spent working alongside Rachel, her unwavering dedication inspiring everyone around her. "She saved us," Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible. "And she reminded us what it means to protect, not just ourselves, but everyone." The containment field around the asteroid field remained intact, monitored closely by scientists from every corner of the galaxy. Though the nanobot remnants posed no immediate threat, their presence served as a constant reminder of the dangers of unchecked experimentation. Humanity's warnings had been proven true, and their actions had earned them respect, but also scrutiny. Other species wondered whether Earth's possession of Project Prometheus made them a safeguard or a potential threat. For now, peace prevailed, but the scars of the crisis ran deep, shaping the future in ways no one could predict. Trust was fragile, alliances tentative, and questions lingered about what might come next. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one truth remained clear. Humanity had shown the galaxy why anchoring them was a risk no one should take lightly. As the stars twinkled silently in the endless expanse of space, Commander Elias Drake reflected on the lessons learned. "They warned us," he said softly to himself, "and we didn't listen. Let's hope we never make that mistake again." Far away in the quiet depths of space, the containment field shimmered like a beacon, a symbol of unity, resilience, and the enduring spirit of a species that had once been underestimated. Humanity's place among the stars was secure, not because of fear, but because of the legacy of courage and sacrifice they had left behind.